The phone rang too early for a Saturday. Liam shifted in bed, thinking about ignoring the call, but a voice in his head urged him to pick it up. It might be important, he thought. Struggling, he opened his eyes and saw the clock on the nightstand reading 6:30 a.m. Damn, it hadn't even been 2 hours since he fell asleep. He reached out, grabbed the phone, and saw his mom's name, Amelia, on the screen. He immediately sat up in bed and pressed the button to answer. His mom wouldn't call unless it was important, she knew his crazy schedule. Hello? Son, his mom's voice was barely a whisper. She sniffled, revealing she had been crying. Liam felt a shiver run down his spine. Something serious had happened. Your grandfather passed away. Liam opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was still trying to process what his mom had said, even though he clearly heard every word. But, he mumbled, unable to believe it. It was sudden. A heart attack. Amelia informed him, aware she had caught him off guard. Everyone was shocked. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the funeral. I'm still recovering from the surgery for my thrombosis. I can't sit in a car for hours with my legs down. It's more than 200 miles to your grandparents' house. Your dad will come pick you up in half an hour, okay? Am my dad? Liam asked, his voice choked. Yeah, you need to go with him. But Mom. Dad and I haven't spoken in years, how are we going to spend hours alone in a car? No way. Liam, his mom's tone raised. James just lost his father. He's devastated, and he can't drive alone. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just be there with him. Liam's shoulders slumped forward. He knew there was no way to change his mom's mind. And what did he think about this idea? He has his own worries, but he didn't object. Of course, he didn't. What would be the point? Like his dad, Liam couldn't escape the trap his mom had set. He sighed, defeated. Fine. I'll get ready. Son. Amelia called before Liam could hang up. Be patient with James. Losing a father is a huge pain. I've been through it, and I know how hard it is. Forget the differences for one day and say goodbye to Theodore. He would want you both to be together right now. I'll try, Mom. Liam hung up, but stayed sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. The room was bathed in the gray light of morning, and the guitar propped up in the corner felt more like an intruder than an old friend. He felt a tightness in his chest as his throat constricted, tears welling up in his eyes. Oh, Grandpa, he whined, burying his face in his hands and letting the flood of tears roll freely down his face. He sobbed, feeling the pain of losing someone he loved so much. His grandfather would be missed deeply. He had always been his biggest supporter and friend. Liam had relied on Theodore's encouragement and advice to follow his heart and pursue his dream of becoming a singer, even when his parents discouraged and criticized his choice. If it weren't for his grandfather, Liam probably would have caved to his parents' pressure and studied law. He would have been an unhappy lawyer, he was sure. He was happy singing, traveling the country, even though the price for that was being distant from his dad. Amelia had eventually accepted Liam's decision, but James had simply gone silent and withdrawn from his son's life. Everything Liam had achieved, he owed to his grandfather. And it was for Theodore that he'd make that trip with his dad. Now, all he could do was hope the hours to get to the countryside passed quickly. The black SUV stopped at the curb with pinpoint accuracy. With a backpack and guitar slung over his shoulder, Liam took a deep breath and got into James' expensive car. Good morning, he greeted his dad, his voice still hoarse from barely any rest, as he put his things in the back seat. Good morning. James replied curtly. The car was clean and organized, which was no surprise. His dad was very particular about his things. It smelled like leather and that freshener people hang on their rearview mirrors. I need coffee for the road, Liam told his dad, who only nodded in agreement. James stopped at the first coffee shop he found along the way. After Liam bought a giant cup of his daily poison, they hit the road. Neither of them said a word for the first 60 miles, only the music from James' playlist filled the silence. He drove with his eyes fixed on the road, occasionally shifting in his seat uncomfortably. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, cutting through fields and small towns. Liam looked out the window, trying to distract himself from his thoughts. Each solitary tree that passed by seemed more present than the man sitting at the wheel. Liam pulled his cap down over his face and tried to sleep for a few more miles, but he couldn't. It was impossible to relax with everything going on. Besides his grandfather's death, being in such a confined space with his dad made him restless and annoyed. Even if he wanted to start a conversation to break the tension and make the time go by faster, he wouldn't know what to say. The truth was, he and his dad didn't have anything in common. They didn't like the same things, disagreed on almost everything, and because of all the years apart, it felt like James was a stranger to him. He hated it. He wished his dad were more present in his life, but he couldn't abandon his plans and dreams just to feed Dr. James Roberts' ego. The lyrics of the song that started playing made Liam remember the last time he and his dad were in a car together on this same road, heading to his grandparents' house for Theodore's 75th birthday 5 years ago. Liam had seized the opportunity of the relaxed family vibe to announce he was dropping out of law school to focus entirely on music. "You're throwing your life away," James had accused, unable to believe the absurdity of what his son had said. "No, Dad. I'll be throwing my life away if I keep studying something I don't like, to work in a field that doesn't resonate with me. I don't want to be a lawyer. You just want an easy life. You're an adult now, Liam, it's time to grow up." James had shouted, glaring at him through the rearview mirror. The argument lasted the whole drive, and once it became clear Liam wouldn't change his mind, James decided he wouldn't support his son. "Don't come asking me for help when you're starving and can't pay rent. From now on, don't count on me for anything," he'd warned, firm as stone. 5 years had passed since then. Liam had never turned to his parents, even through the rough patches in the beginning of his career. And he never regretted the choice he made, even though he lost his dad's friendship and presence. They were an hour away from the house where James was born and raised when the car started to sputter. First, a small jolt. Then, a sharp noise, like the engine was struggling to stay alive. "Damn," James muttered, pulling over to the shoulder. Liam turned off the radio, feeling the silence settle with a new weight. They both got out of the car. The road was empty, surrounded by fields and a distant forest. Checking their phones, they saw the signal flickering in and out, as if taunting them. James popped the hood of the car and tried to diagnose the issue, but he knew as much about mechanics as he did about medicine, nothing. He glanced at Liam, who stared at the engine parts with the same confusion. "Isn't this car new?" Liam remembered his mom saying that his dad had spent a small fortune on this latest purchase. "Yeah," James muttered, checking his non-existent phone signal again. "I hate the countryside," he yelled, slamming the hood shut a little too hard. "We just passed a gas station a few minutes ago," Liam said, opening the back door to grab his backpack and guitar. "We'll have to walk back and ask for help there." James wanted to protest, but he knew Liam was right. With no cell service, there was no way to call roadside assistance. He grabbed his wallet, the water bottle from the holder, and locked the car. Fortunately, the sky was cloudy, and the sun was hidden behind the clouds, so heat wouldn't be a problem. They walked in silence, with James unable to shake the feeling that this had to be some cruel joke from his recently deceased father. Maybe Theodore had refused to move on just to get them to reconnect, something he never managed to do while alive. And he had tried many times. "Stubborn old man," James grumbled, kicking a rock off the asphalt. "You are, too," Liam teased, fully aware his dad wasn't talking about himself. James shot Liam a disapproving look. "Do you think Grandpa sabotaged the car so we'd stop ignoring each other?" James wasn't surprised Liam had thought the same thing. They both knew Theodore very well. "Sounds like something he'd do," James had to admit, earning a laugh from Liam. He laughed too, because the idea was so absurd. He didn't even believe in ghosts. "Just one last trick," Liam concluded, remembering the magic tricks Theodore loved performing for his grandkids when they were kids. "We're going to need more than a walk to fix our problems." James said. There was an air of arrogance in his voice that irritated Liam. Our problems? I don't have any problems with you, Dad. The issues you think you have with me are yours, and only yours. So, only you can fix them. Running away from your responsibilities, as always. James sneered, shaking his head. Maybe it's you running away, Dad. You chose to cut me out of your life rather than accept that I don't want to be like you. What's so wrong with being like me? James asked. I have my own law firm, a respected career. Are you happy, Dad? Liam interrupted him, because he knew that speech by heart. Answer me honestly. You've got prestige, money, but are you happy? Really happy? Happiness is a utopia, Liam. James replied coldly. We do what we have to do, and that's it. Liam opened his mouth to argue, but his dad raised his hand, cutting him off. Enough of this. We've had this discussion 1,000 times and nothing's changed. We're just wasting our breath again. Nothing will change until you admit that I did what I had to do, too. Liam's quiet, resigned tone revealed how much he regretted that his dad didn't understand him. James lowered his head and didn't say another word. Liam respected his dad's silence and walked alongside him, just wishing things could be different. The gas station diner was simple, with faded plastic chairs and fruit-patterned tablecloths. It smelled like old oil, grilled sandwiches, and reheated coffee. Behind the counter, a lady with her hair tied up in a bun was preparing grilled cheese sandwiches with almost military precision. James and Liam sat by the window, each with a cup of black coffee in front of them. The silence still hung between them, but now it was less hostile. They were relieved to have made it to the gas station and managed to get in touch with the insurance company. A mechanic was on his way to pick them up and take them back to the car to check what caused the breakdown. They could only wait and hope it was something simple. They were already too late for his dad's funeral. Liam didn't want to risk arriving just in time for the burial. Hey! You're Liam Roberts, right? Liam looked up at the girl who had called his name. She was young, with a huge smile on her pink lips, and her dark eyes sparkled with excitement. Yeah, that's me, he said gently, returning her smile. He loved being recognized. He was still getting used to the growing fame, so he was always surprised when people approached him. Oh my God! The girl jumped up and down, clapping her hands. I love your music. And I love you too, of course. Can we take a selfie, please? Of course. Liam laughed at her excitement. He took off his cap, ran his hands through his brown hair to fix it, then stood up to take the selfie with the fan. Thank you. I'm posting it right now. She planted a kiss on Liam's cheek before running back to her family at a table across the room. You see, I'm getting famous. Soon enough, some TV show is gonna reach out to you and Mom to tell my story, Liam joked as he sat back down. Oh, sure, very famous. One fan in a rundown diner in the middle of nowhere doesn't make you a superstar, James scoffed, taking another sip of his overly bitter coffee. Liam's expression hardened, and he stared at the man across from him. Why can't you just recognize my achievements for once in your life? He tried to keep his voice low so others wouldn't hear, but his urge was to shout at his dad. He was tired of being dismissed and undervalued by the person who should love and support him the most. I did exactly what you said. I didn't come to you for help when things got tough. Because they did, Dad. But I stuck to my decision. I had a dream, and I went after it. I'm still going after it. Why can't you accept that my path is different from yours? James looked down at the worn-out diner cup, staring into the dark liquid for a few seconds as if searching for the answer at the bottom of the cup. He tried to start, but it was so hard to explain how he felt. He had kept all those feelings locked away for so many years that they felt solidified inside him. Were you afraid of what others would think? Liam pressed. That your son would be an artist, and not a lawyer? James nodded and met his son's eyes that were so similar to his own. But it's not just that. I was afraid you'd get lost. That you wouldn't have stability, health insurance, a house, a family. I worked so hard to build the life I have today, and the path you chose is too unstable. Not to mention the dangers of the road, moving to a different city every week. I think it's crazy. And you thought that if you didn't support me, if you didn't follow my life, you wouldn't suffer if something happened to me? Words are like arrows, son. Once they're released, they never return to our hands, James philosophized. We said some pretty harsh things to each other on that last trip. One corner of Liam's mouth curved into a small smile. Feels like an eternity since I've heard you call me son. Not. James couldn't smile. Now that his guard was down, conflicting feelings were stirring in his head. He knew he had been too harsh with Liam by cutting him out of his life, but as time passed, the gap between them grew, and it seemed easier to just let things be. The truth was, he had lost 5 years of his son's life, and admitting how wrong he had been was hard. He wasn't the type of man who was used to apologizing. The waitress brought the grilled sandwiches they had ordered, and they ate in silence, chewing slowly, giving themselves time and space to think about what had been said and heard. They finished their sandwiches at the exact moment the insurance mechanic arrived, as if they had planned it. As they left the diner, something had changed within them. They still didn't know exactly how they felt or what had changed, but they weren't the same people who had started the trip. They knew they had many issues to resolve, but they had taken the first step. The car hit the road again with a firmer rumble after the repair, which turned out to be a simple fix. The sky, however, told a different story. Heavy clouds raced across the horizon, and a cold wind blew, like a warning of something to come. James drove with his hands firmly gripping the wheel, his eyes lost on the road. Liam, sitting next to him, stared at the sky, thinking about how the weather seemed to match the day perfectly. Even though the tension between him and his dad had eased, the pain of his grandfather's death still lingered in the car, making their hearts heavy and their minds restless. The rain started light, then grew stronger. The highway turned into a gray blur. James slowed down, the windshield wipers squeaking as if fighting against the fury of the sky. "Want to pull over for a bit?" Liam suggested. James nodded, and a few miles ahead, they found an abandoned gas station. They pulled over and relaxed in the leather seats. No point in fighting the rain, they'd have to wait for the storm to die down before they could safely continue. The sound of the rain hitting the car's metal was so loud that they couldn't hear the music anymore. James turned off the radio and closed his eyes for a moment. He was tired from the grueling office routine and had hoped to rest that weekend, but the news about his father's unexpected death had once again confirmed how little we control in life. He would bury Theodore and be back at work on Monday. Of course, being his own boss meant he could take a few days off, but throwing himself into work had always been his way of dealing with problems. Or rather, not dealing with them. "You tired? Want me to drive for a bit?" Liam offered, noticing the dark circles under his dad's eyes. "No need, we're almost there." Liam didn't press, instead looking at the fogged-up window beside him. A thunderclap erupted in the sky, making him jump in the passenger seat. James couldn't help but laugh. "You still scared of thunder?" he asked, teasing. "It's one of the few things I'm still afraid of," Liam admitted. "Thunder, hospitals, and losing the people I love. Those are my fears." James shook his head, as if accepting that. "And what about you?" Liam asked, looking at his dad. "Failing." James didn't even need to think about the answer, but he hesitated a moment before continuing. "Your grandfather was a good man, a present father, a loving husband, but he was too laid back, like my mom says. He didn't push his kids to study or think about the future. He lived a simple life and was content with what he had, but I always wanted more than he could give me. That's why I threw myself into studying, got a job to pay for college, and promised myself I would never stop, always striving to be better. I had to become a strict, rational person so I wouldn't give up. So I wouldn't fail. That's why I was so hard on you when you wanted to drop out of school to be a musician." Everything I built thinking about you too, your future, but you rejected it like it meant nothing. That was never my intention, Liam tried to say, but James interrupted. That's how I felt. He stared at the windshield, avoiding his son's gaze. It was hard to open up like this, to reveal his deepest thoughts and vulnerabilities. I felt like I failed somehow, that you strayed so far from the path I thought you'd take. From the path you planned for me. I never said I wanted to be a lawyer, Dad. You never knew what you wanted to be. You needed direction, and I, as your father, gave it to you. And you didn't accept when I didn't follow your guidance. You don't believe me, but I am capable of making my own choices, Dad. I appreciate you trying to help, but I don't need you to guide and protect me anymore. Liam reached over and placed his hand on his father's, resting on his leg, silently asking him to look at him. I'm okay, Dad. I haven't lost my way, I'm paying my bills, I have a home, and one day, I'll build my family. You haven't failed me. James squeezed his son's fingers, trying not to let the emotions spill over into tears. I failed by distancing myself from you, not dealing with the disappointment I felt when I heard about your plans. I failed by not trying to understand you. By excluding you. I lost all those years of your life because I couldn't bring myself to apologize. We still have the future, Dad. We can do things differently from now on. Can you forgive me? James' voice cracked. Of course, Dad. I forgive you. And I also ask for your forgiveness for not pushing harder with you. I could have stayed present instead of just accepting that you didn't want me around. A quiet tear rolled down James' cheek, and moved by the moment, Liam pulled his dad into a reconciling hug. They cried together, releasing the bitterness they had both carried in their hearts for so long. The rain started to ease. The noise became a whisper. The storm, like all storms, wasn't meant to last. One final drop slid down the windshield. Through the window, they saw a small ray of sunlight breaking through the mist, just like the love between James and Liam, which had finally managed to bridge their differences. The town felt quieter than usual. The houses with low fences, the old trees lining the sidewalks, the smell of wet earth after the rain, everything seemed frozen in time, as if waiting for someone to return. Theodore Roberts had been a pillar of the community. The absence he left behind was reflected in the silence and somberness of the people that day, a day that would stay etched in everyone's memory. Many businesses were closed in observance of the mourning. The church must be packed, James commented, driving slowly, his eyes scanning each shop with the shutters down. Grandpa was really loved. Liam said, a sad smile stretching across his lips. I hope he knew how much people cared about him. He knew. James replied. He and your grandmother built bonds with this town, with these people. They were like family. Liam nodded and looked back at the empty streets, recalling moments from his childhood and youth scattered throughout the corners of the town. They had been happy years, and he was deeply grateful for having lived them. That thought sparked a flash of inspiration in his caffeine-awakened mind. He immediately grabbed his phone and began typing. What's up? James asked, noticing his son's sudden burst of energy. I got an idea for a song. Liam responded, his eyes glued to the screen of the device in his hands. James smiled, finding it amusing. He decided to remain silent, allowing his son to savor the moment of getting the words out. Soon, everything would be overtaken by sorrow and a longing that was already starting to sting. James parked the car in silence. Liam tucked his phone into the pocket of his denim jacket but didn't make any move to get out. Like his father, he noticed the contrast between the area around the church and the empty streets they had just driven through. There were cars and people everywhere now. Most of the town's residents were coming to say their goodbyes to Theodore. Are you ready? James asked. Not at all. But let's go, Liam replied, resigned. The morning sun filtered through the church's old windows, casting a pale light across the worn tile floor. The place was quiet, almost reverent, as if even time had slowed down in respect for what was coming to an end there. The coffin rested on the altar, surrounded by flowers, and observed by lost, distant gazes. A priest with a soft voice spoke generic words about life, transition, and eternity. But James wasn't listening. He was staring at his father's face, now still, finally at peace. Memories came in fragments, the simple, yet happy childhood, the modest birthdays, always celebrated with the cake his mother baked, the looks and words of love and affection from Theodore, even when James had pulled one of his usual pranks. Despite the lack of money, he had no complaints. He had good parents who raised him the best way they could. When the priest invited him to speak, James hesitated. The silence felt more comfortable, but something inside him needed to come out, even if it was messy, imperfect. He stood up and walked to the microphone, which his older brother Elijah had just used. All eyes turned to the middle child, the only one who no longer lived in town. "I've never been good with words," he began. "Not when it comes to feelings. My dad, he was great with them, even though he did it simply." A few people smiled empathetically. He always had advice at the tip of his tongue. He had a hard life, but he was so grateful for the little he had. I think that's why he was so loving, patient, and, as my mom always called him, laid back. Soft chuckles echoed through the hall. James looked at Mrs. Ava, sitting in the front row next to Liam and other family members, and returned her bittersweet, emotional smile. Ava had also been a loving mother, but she had carried the burden of keeping her 3 sons in check, as Theodore worked all day and always downplayed his wife's complaints. She worried about their future but resigned herself to not being able to do much for them. "I'm so grateful for everything you did for us, Dad." James lowered his eyes to Theodore's pale face and took a deep breath to contain the new wave of emotion that hit him. "Rest in peace, Dad. Even though you're no longer here, you have no idea how much you're still helping us." He looked at Liam and gave him a slight smile. Liam knew exactly what James meant. Grandpa's death had brought them back together. James barely heard the applause from the crowd. He was caught in the feeling of relief that making peace with his son had brought. He wished that Theodore, wherever he was, knew that now he understood what his father had tried to say so many times: nothing is more important than love. Outside, the wind was light, and the sky clear. The farewell was silent. One by one, friends and family threw flowers into the freshly dug grave. James and Liam tossed white rose petals, supporting and comforting each other. When they left the cemetery, they hadn't just left behind a body. They left behind a cycle. The Roberts family house felt quieter once the people who had come to offer their condolences had left. The night fell over the house like an old, slightly worn blanket, still warm, though. The furniture stayed in the same place as always, like guardians of old memories. The familiar scent of wood, bread, and freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, as if the house was insisting on staying alive, even with the morning hanging in every corner. In the kitchen, Mrs. Ava sat at the table, stirring a cup of tea. Her dark eyes, deep, tired, but still firm, lifted when she saw James and Liam walk in. "It's so good to see you both together again," she said, smiling gently. Theodore would have been happy about that. "Definitely," Liam replied, sitting to his grandmother's right, at the head of the long wooden table, while James took the seat across from her. "He really worked hard to get us to make peace." He winked at his dad with a knowing look. He believed that love always wins. Mrs. Ava stretched her arms and reached for the hands of both her son and grandson. "Because, in the end, it's all that matters. Did you see how loved he was by everyone? The whole town came to say goodbye. That's what he left behind, so much love." They smiled at the matriarch, but before they could say anything else, Elijah and Emma, the younger sister, walked into the kitchen and sat at the table in silence. They were all drained from the long day. "I never imagined so many people could fit in this house," Emma confessed, pouring herself some coffee from the pot on the table. "This must be my 7th cup of the day." She took a sip, making a face at the lukewarm liquid. "Where's Owen?" James asked. He hadn't had many chances to talk to his brother-in-law. He took the kids home, Emma replied. Kids? Liam asked, raising an eyebrow, considering that their cousins, Noah and Mia, were already 19. They'll always be my babies. Emma joked. Mrs. Ava pushed her teacup away and stood up. I need a bath. Before leaving, she looked at James and Liam. You're staying here, right? Of course, Mom. James confirmed. Great. There are clean sheets and towels in your old room. Good night, kids. They all wished Ava a good night's sleep, knowing it would be hard for her to rest despite the exhaustion. This would be the first time in nearly 60 years that she would sleep without her companion by her side. James stared at the chair his mother had been sitting in, the same one Theodore used to occupy. So many meals and conversations had taken place around this table. And now, here they were, fatherless and carrying pieces of him in every gesture. Remember the time Dad tried to barbecue in the backyard and almost set the neighbor's fence on fire? Emma said, breaking the heavy silence with a mischievous smile. She was always good at lightening the mood. Elijah laughed. And he still blamed the wind. Said the Coles rebelled. Mom didn't speak to him for a week, James recalled, smiling nostalgically. But at the end of the day, the meat turned out good, Emma reminisced. We ate it all sitting on the floor, with our colorful plastic plates. James closed his eyes for a moment, as if he could smell the charcoal, hear the voices from that day. I remember one summer, he said, when it rained so much we set up a tent in the living room. We even tied a sheet to the ceiling fan. And you made me sleep in the monster room, Emma complained, laughing. Which was actually just the musty-smelling pantry. That was classic older sibling strategy, Elijah defended himself. You had to learn to survive. They all laughed together, really laughed. The kind of laugh that eases the pain a little, that reminds you that before the hurt, there was childhood, there were bonds. James looked at his siblings, feeling something tighten in his chest. We kind of lost touch over the years, didn't we? He commented, more seriously. No. We just went different ways. Elijah softened it. He'd always understood James' ambition, even if they saw it differently. But this house, these moments, they're still ours. And that night, over lukewarm coffee, happy memories, and the silent presence of their father in the house's walls, the siblings, for a brief moment, were just three kids in a sheet fort again. It was well into the night when Elijah and Emma left, and the house fell completely silent. Liam settled into Emma's old room, while James took the one he had shared with his brother for over 20 years. He took a shower and tried to sleep, but even though his body was exhausted, his mind wouldn't shut off. He thought about the years spent in that town, about his father, his wife alone at home, and the work that awaited him on Monday. He didn't regret moving to the city and building his life away from the family, though he visited them regularly. But he couldn't help that voice in his head, questioning if he was truly living his life to the fullest, just like Theodore had, in his own way and with his own worldview. He had worked hard to gain stability in his career and provide a comfortable life for his wife and only child. He had a privileged life, he couldn't deny that. But was it enough? Was he missing something by focusing so much on money? The questions swirled in his mind, and he gave up fighting them. He got up and left the room. As he passed by Liam's room, he noticed through the crack in the door that the light was still on. His son, too, couldn't sleep. He knocked lightly on the door and turned the handle, the door creaking as he opened it. Can I come in? He asked. Sure, Dad, Liam replied, sitting on the single bed with his guitar in his lap. James closed the door behind him and sat in the chair by the old desk, once Emma's. Have you finished that song? He asked. Not yet, still thinking about some arrangements. Liam hesitated but decided to take a chance. Wanna hear how it's coming along? That would be nice. James admitted, making Liam smile. Liam lowered his eyes to the instrument and began to strum. The melody was simple, but full of pauses, like each break carried what words couldn't say. The lyrics were about a happy childhood. A tribute to the grandfather who had loved him and supported him, especially during the times he needed it most. You were the hero of my backyard. With your simple ways, so natural. You showed me life with a smile. And made little things feel like paradise. Now I see you in the wind that blows. In the flower that blooms, in the afternoon that's near. And everything I am, I learned. In the peace of your way of caring for me. If I could go back for just one more day, I'd run to the sound of your calmness. You were the hero of my backyard. And you still are, even without calling me. I carry you in my heart. Like a prayer, like a song. Liam fell silent and closed his eyes for a moment. It's beautiful, son, James said, touched. You've got so much talent. I'm sorry it took me so long to admit that. If that's true, I want to see you and Mom at my show next week. Liam teased, trying to keep the mood light, not wanting to revisit the past again. Let's take it easy, okay? I'm not 20 anymore, standing at a show isn't as easy as it used to be. That's what happens when you spend all day sitting at an office, Liam teased, resting his guitar on the bed. Maybe I should start going to the gym with your mom. James pondered, thinking about how his father passed. That's a great idea. It'll help you relieve some stress. James raised his eyebrows, realizing that Liam had no idea just how much he needed it. What are the chances of finding some whiskey in this house, he asked, without much hope. I'm 100% sure Grandpa never opened that bottle of imported whiskey you gave him for his 75th birthday. The memory of the fancy gift James had given his father popped into his mind. He hadn't thought about it in a long time. Whiskey wasn't really his style. I think I just wanted to show off by giving him something expensive. I should have bought something he actually liked. I think I know where he kept it. Liam smiled, suddenly looking like a mischievous kid. Seriously? James perked up at the idea of clearing his head with some alcohol. Father and son went downstairs and into the kitchen. Liam turned on the light and walked over to the stove in the corner of the room. He opened the last door of the wooden cabinet under the hood and moved some items around until he reached the bottle of glass. He hid it? James asked, surprised. I think it was important to him. James grabbed 2 glass cups from the cabinet on the other side and gestured for Liam to follow him. They went out to the front porch of the house and sat in 2 wicker rocking chairs. Theodore had drunk his black coffee every morning in that very spot, watching the daybreak and silently offering his prayers. Liam handed the bottle to his father to open it, watching him hesitate for a moment. Maybe he felt it was wrong to take something from Theodore just hours after his death. He saved it for you, Liam revealed. James didn't believe it. Do you think he just didn't want to throw it away or give it to someone else? He told me he saved it for you, Dad. James' eyebrows furrowed. When? Liam shrugged, not remembering exactly. Once when I came to visit him and Grandma. I was looking for something in the cabinet and found the bottle. I remembered you gave it to him as a gift and asked him if he wasn't going to open it. He said he didn't like whiskey, preferred beer, and that he was saving it for you. James' eyes started to water, and he looked away to focus on the heavy bottle in his hands. You might have given that expensive whiskey to show off, and he knew that, but he didn't mind. Grandpa was proud of you. He wasn't going to drink it, so he saved it for you. He'd never give it to anyone else or throw it away. James nodded, recognizing the truth in his son's words. Moved, he twisted the cap, breaking the seal. He poured some of the amber liquid into each glass. May you rest in peace, Dad. I'll love you forever, James declared, lifting his glass to Liam's. To Grandpa. They clinked glasses and drank the whiskey in silence, staring at the starry sky. The night was calm, with a gentle breeze blowing. Your mom told me you met a girl. James brought up after a while. Liam smiled. That's true. James waited, but his son didn't say anything more. Come on, spill it. What's her name? Where's she from? Mom asked you to investigate, didn't she? Liam teased. She's dying to be a grandmother, but I've already told her that won't happen anytime soon. You're right, you're still young, just 26, you've got plenty of life to live before taking on that responsibility. Tell that to your wife. James smiled, knowing full well his wife's desire to be a grandmother. Her name's Cootie, Liam whispered. Cootie? James had never heard that name before. She's Japanese. Born in Japan, but moved to the US as a teenager. And where did you two meet? At a shoot. She was the photographer. I think it was love at first sight. But we're taking it slow. She's hesitant because I'm an artist and all. James took the last sip from his glass, liking what he heard. She's not wrong, she must be dealing with a lot of women vying for your attention. Liam nodded, confirming. He'd gone out with many women since he started getting recognized for his work. At first, it was fun, but now he missed having someone real by his side. Fame makes things easier, but I've always been about relationships, you know. Then ask her out. I already did, but she said it's too soon, that we're still getting to know each other. James grabbed the bottle he had left on the floor between the chairs and poured another round of whiskey into their glasses. You know I met your mom in college, right? He said after savoring another sip. Yes. Liam confirmed. You graduated together. What you probably don't know is that she had a boyfriend in her first year, so she didn't give me much attention. She put me in the friend zone. Liam couldn't hold back a laugh. It was funny to imagine his young parents going through that. But I knew, from the things she'd tell me, that the guy was going to mess up. And he didn't disappoint. As soon as she found out he was seeing other girls and broke up with him, I declared my feelings. Sorry, Dad, but it's hard to picture that scene. You, all serious and nerdy, chasing after Mom and declaring your love. I had my moments, alright? I'm introverted, but not a pushover. Liam stared at his dad, admiring this side of him he rarely showed, not even at home. So what did she say? He asked, curious. Amelia had just been betrayed, she was really hurt, and didn't give me much hope. But I understood that I had to give her time to heal and trust me. Liam started to understand why his dad was telling this story. And how did you get her to lower her guard? I didn't date anyone else, even though she said she didn't want anything with me. I stayed single, waiting for her, getting closer little by little. Then she agreed to have dinner with me. We went to a nice restaurant, I was respectful, let things happen naturally. Women can tell when guys just want to have fun. Your mom realized I wasn't like that. James shook his glass, swirling the remaining whiskey at the bottom. Probably Cootie had a major disappointment and is scared of getting hurt again. You need to show her that you really care about her, like you say. I'm not sure how to do that. Liam finished his drink and set the glass on the floor next to the bottle. I'm sure you know how. You just showed me a beautiful song you wrote for your grandfather. Unlike me, you have no trouble expressing your feelings. Use that to your advantage. Liam stood up and walked thoughtfully across the small porch. You're telling me to write a song for Cootie? Aren't you a songwriter? If you really love her, it'd be a way to show it. Liam had to admit his dad was right. Why hadn't he thought of that before? Wow, Dr. James, I'd call you a genius if this idea weren't so cliché. Almost as much as the guy running after the woman at the airport to stop her from leaving. Sometimes the basics work. James smiled, proud that he'd been able to help his son. These conversations about feelings were more Amelia's domain, he always handled the practical stuff, the things that were solved with actions. Thanks, Dad. Liam looked at him with gratitude and love. James got up from the old chair and placed an arm around his son's shoulder. Thank you, son, for being here with me. I didn't know how much I needed this. Liam shook his head, wanting to say it was nothing, and hugged his dad. A tight hug that united their broken hearts. Hugs like that don't heal everything, but they open cracks. And sometimes, it's through those cracks that the light gets in. The morning sun invaded the kitchen without asking, streaming through the thin curtains and lighting up the cups on the counter. It was an ordinary day, with ordinary light, but everything felt different. As if the house still didn't know how to exist without Theodore. James stood by the window, holding a mug of coffee. The silence was different from the kind of silence that comes with morning. It was a silence of new beginnings, uncertain, fragile. "Have you gotten up, son?" Mrs. Ava asked, walking in slowly. James looked at his mother and noticed, from the deep circles under her eyes, that she hadn't been able to rest either. He raised his arm, motioning for her to come closer. Ava stepped forward and fit into the tight, warm embrace of her middle child, who rarely showed affection like this. He was the most serious and responsible of the three. The one who fought the hardest to have a life different from the one she and Theodore had been able to provide. James heard the front door open and tilted his head to see who had arrived. It was Emma, followed by her husband and the twin children. "Good morning," she greeted, lifting a few bags she was carrying. "Breakfast is on me today." Elijah arrived shortly after with the rest of the family, his wife, their 3 adult daughters with their husbands, and the 5 grandchildren. The kitchen table and living room were filled. Everyone gathered together, no rush, no sense of urgency. They were simply there because they wanted to be. They ate while chatting about light topics, plans, and memories that now stunned less. The morning passed simply, as all mornings should. But at that table, between crumbs and memories, there was something sacred, the choice to stay together. James and Liam hit the road just before lunch. In the car, the silence between them was comfortable. Each lost in their thoughts, but connected by something new. A new beginning. On that way back, with gentle curves and landscapes passing by like fleeting thoughts, father and son didn't need to say anything more. Because, at last, they were heading in the same direction. The stage lights were bright, but not blinding. They revealed. Liam adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath, trying to steady his hands. The guitar rested on his lap like an extension of his own body. The venue wasn't large, but it was packed. And that was enough for that night. James sat in the second row with Amelia. Eyes focused, arms intertwined with his wife's, his expression a mix of pride, nervousness, and something almost childlike, awe. Liam looked at them before starting. And smiled. The first notes sounded delicate. It was the same song he'd played on his grandfather's porch. But now, with new chords, a firmer beat, and a voice that carried everything he had lived through since then. At the end of the song, applause filled the room. Liam smiled and lowered his head in thanks. "The next song is new too," Liam announced into the microphone. "And like the last one, I wrote it on the weekend I lost my grandfather. It's for a girl. I hope she likes it." He winked at his dad before strumming the guitar strings. "You with the camera in your hand. Capturing the world without a word. I know fame scares your heart. You fear being just another face in the crowd. But my stage doesn't shine if you're not there. My sound has no soul if it's not meant to reach you. And I swear I don't want applause. If I lose your smile in the end. I'm not a star, just a man. Who fell in love with you this way? Focus on us, forget the reason. I don't want an audience, not a crowd. I want your heart." James and Amelia stood up to applaud their son and saw a girl, with dark hair and almond-shaped eyes, walk on stage to hug and kiss Liam. He whispered something in her ear, and she nodded before kissing him again. It seemed that Cootie had accepted Liam's proposal. James puffed out his chest, proud of the advice he had given his son to win over the woman he loved. Liam turned his head, looking for his father. Their eyes met. No need to wave, no need to speak. There was a pact there, silent, powerful, whole. They would never be apart again because now they knew that, in the end, only love mattered.